episode of Comedy. Yeah, it sounds Luxembourgish, it is. But we are back with an English episode, and this time I'm not alone. Very happy to have him here. I mean, we know each other for quite a while now, and yeah, welcome to the show, my dear brother-in-law.
Hello, hello. Yeah, well, what can I say about myself? I'm Sean. Hi, nice to meet you guys.
He's Sean. That's true. I mean, I can confer that this is Sean. And so why is he here, basically? And I had this idea for a while now to bring in some musicians, friends or whatever, for family in this case, to talk about like our different musical backgrounds. And obviously Sean and mine are pretty different, but yet they are somehow connected. And I think that's the reason why we're here today.
Yeah.
To some extent.
I mean, fairly different, yet at the same time, I mean, how different can you be? I mean, we are both musicians.
Yes, let's put it that way.
Okay, so I guess that everyone knows you and what you do.
That is true. And it's basically the second episode we do in English language. So I'm very pleased also to keep doing this. And in that case, we can go a bit, abroad in my natural way of doing things. And this is not your usual take, I would say.
No,
talk about music, we do it a lot, but not like this.
We do it a lot at the same time, yeah. Okay, well, so maybe just for the new listeners, maybe you can just tell them who you are first.
Hello. So, I mean, our regular listeners, they definitely know who I am. And usually there's more than just myself. There should be Pit as well. He's busy with other things now. And in the meantime, so I brought in Sean, but coming back to me, I'm a guitarist, let's say. I've been a guitarist for many, many years now. I wouldn't say the best, I wouldn't say the worst, but I'm ear trained, so I did not have any schooling or what's not. And so my background is obviously metal. I mean, that's the reason why you're tuning in also, right? So, and Sean is basically, I would say, the opposite, and yet these two musical genres are yet connected in many ways. Yeah.
So I guess let's cut to the chase. So I'm a classically trained pianist.
Oh wow.
I started learning music when I was, how old was I? Probably 6 years old. Started with music theory, then went on to started playing the piano. In the during my years of learning piano, I also started playing the accordion, which I gave up rather quickly because not quite my instrument.
Yeah, it's a strange instrument. Just by looking at it, I've never felt comfortable hearing it, and even looking at it is very strange. But okay, that's
yeah. Well, the thing is that if you grow up learning the piano, I find, well, at least that was my experience, is that the piano allows you to be quite free because you're not carrying the instrument. Yeah, you're playing the instrument, and the instrument is in front of you. It's standing there, and you are pressing buttons in a way, keys. Whereas for the accordion, for example, my experience from it was, okay, well, now suddenly I've got to carry this thing and I don't feel free expressing my music, expressing whatever I want to express through body movements anymore because I'm holding it. I know that a lot of other musicians have said that they find it's the opposite, that carrying the instrument and having that really intimate touch with it allows them to express themselves more. But yeah, I guess because I started with the piano.
But I mean, it's quite interesting because, I mean, compared to the guitar, which is definitely a transportable instrument, compared to a piano or a fligel, how we say in Luxembourgish.
A grand piano.
A grand piano, yeah, sorry. And I could compare it to a harp, maybe, like a classical harp. It's also not that easy to transport.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, a little bit easier than a grand piano, but it's not something you just pick up and run with.
Yeah, definitely not. Yeah, so let's say just a few things to this particular episode, and this particular idea I have. So this particular show that will be continuing hopefully this year as well, several episodes firstly in English, and secondly going into these mix of genres and mix of musical directions. I called it similarities, and you're my first guest. So today we try to talk at least about the effect that metal hat on you,
Uh-huh.
mainly because of me, and now recently also because of your wife, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting, I think, for both of us in that way. And in the same way also for me, because I came in touch with classical music, obviously via radio and stuff, those small samples they play sometimes, but like in depth, I definitely got it through you. So
Yeah.
that made things a bit, let's say, different and more open-mindedly in my aspect, actually. So
Yeah.
that's why we're here. So I will just throw in the first question. I mean, why classical music?
Okay. Well, okay. So we did not prepare these questions.
No,
I
no,
have
no, no.
I have no idea what he's going to
This
ask
is
me.
randomly, as usual. Let's say business as usual.
So why classical music? In a way, because I started with that.
You don't say.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, I mean, as a kid, what did I listen to? Mostly from my parents' influence. Any pop music, 80s, 90s pop music that used to run on the radio, and whatever cassettes we had. Some Bollywood music before it started getting called Bollywood.
What was it called before then?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I have no idea. But anyway,
we should check that out, though.
Yeah, maybe it actually was called Bollywood. I've got no idea. We don't check facts here.
Yeah. No.
So yeah, some Bollywood music through my dad's influence, and some Chinese music, like more traditional kind of Chinese music through my mom's influence. So that was before I started learning music. Now, because I went for piano lessons at the Conservatory of Luxembourg. So
basically, you choose that, or was it like, I want to know what the piano does, or what was basically why did you choose the piano? Was it like an instinctual thing? Or?
Well, the thing is that it wasn't a choice I was really given. My sister started playing the piano before me, and then
I know the culprit. She's
So, by the way, my sister is Gilles' wife. So
yes. So it makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense that he's my brother-in-law, right? So
yeah. She started playing the piano before me, and I mean, seeing her and being the younger brother by 4 years, obviously I wanted to do whatever she did.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I started. And I remember, I mean, like my first piano lesson was basically her showing me whatever she had learned. So like, okay, well, yeah, great.
Yeah. So from the ground up, basically.
Yeah, and actually, like in terms of listening to classical music before that, I'd never been exposed to classical music, and even a long time during my, let's say, classical music studies, I didn't actually start listening to classical music until I was maybe like 10 or 11 years old.
Okay.
And I remember, like, one of the main driving forces for me to actually continue learning the piano and like being super motivated was on one hand because I found this random CD at my grandmother's place in Singapore that had Mozart's Rondo alla Turca on it, and I listened we used to spend our summer holidays in Singapore, and I must have listened to that CD like during those 2 months that I was there. I think I listened to it like every day.
Interesting. I had a similar, go through.
Uh-huh.
So it reminds me a bit of my story, also with one particular CD that like kept playing over and over again. And at that point, though, I was already like at least trying to play guitar because I didn't have a guitar.
Yeah.
My dad played guitar, so I was basically waiting for the opportunity when he left for work or what's not, and then I went to try and play whatever I could play. And I have a similar thing. And that CD, I think it was Mike Oldfield.
Okay. Yeah.
And even though there's not much guitar work on it, because let's be honest, this is quite a complex works he has done, and a lot of noises and a lot of wall of sound, basically structured stuff going on there. So picking out the guitar was definitely not the easiest part for me, because first of all I was not trained like you, for example.
But I mean, at the same time, the thing is that what is training, you practice and you practice and you until you are able to pick out things, right?
But then I remember, like, particularly about that CD was, since I did not know what really the guitar was like sounding like or was supposed to sound like, I just played along the melody.
Ah, okay, interesting.
And yeah, obviously over the years and over the following months, I got more and more obsessed with playing, or at least trying to play the guitar. I didn't even have a plectrum. I had something else, like a piece of plastic, because he didn't use plectrums at the time.
Okay.
So that was funny, and convincing my parents then that okay, I want a guitar because I want to play guitar.
Yeah.
That was also not because let's be honest, for me it was, I think, quite late. It must have been around also like 12 or 13 years, around there.
Okay.
So starting to get like in the teenager years where you have no clue what to do and you just want to yourself and your parents mostly.
Yeah.
So that was not easy, but in the end, yeah, it turned out to be the instrument I really went for. And as you can tell by the room we're sitting in, there's a lot exposed here that tells the story, even though now it's been several years. And
yeah, so I just counted. There are,
yes.
I think, 6 guitars in this room.
I'm not sure where you see the 6th one, but okay.
Oh, 5. Okay, sorry.
That's the mirror. Yeah. The mirror got you there. So.
5 guitars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, I don't know how to count.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We are not here to count. We are here to tell BS and convince you guys that we know what we're talking about.
Oh,
but
I don't.
We actually don't. So.
Okay. Good that we are on that page. Yeah, okay. So like 12, 13 is when you started.
It must have been around there. I didn't keep track of this because my sister, for example, like compared to your sister, she's not the musical type. So she never played any instrument as far as I know. And so there was no drive. Basically, the only drive I had was seeing my dad. And over the years also noticing that, oh, I think I'm better than my dad now.
Will he be listening to this?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Then you're safe.
I'll tell you in a week. If I tell you he didn't listen, if you don't hear anything from me, it's definitely something wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that was my motivation to at first get better than my dad and be able to play along these songs that, well, at the time I was listening to. And from there, yeah, you know the story, right? I mean, and many listeners know the story. From there, I took the wrong turn and I went into those really dark and death metal kind of things, and heavy metal first of all, and then went deeper and deeper. And yeah, that's my story basically.
So how I'm quite interested in finding out how you started. I mean, like, okay, yeah, you tried to. You tried to replicate a melody, you tried to replicate the things that you were hearing. But, I mean, I've met a few people who, when trying to learn by themselves, they have got no idea whether they're playing correctly or they're playing wrong. Like,
I remember we had a discussion shortly before this. And,
I mean, there are some people who, first of all, don't have a sense of pitch. Who can't hear whether they are playing or singing the right pitch, and rhythm as well. So, like, was that something that you struggled with? Was it something that where people gave you feedback, or was it just something that
not at all? I mean, not at all. Not at all in terms of nobody gave me feedback because whatever I was playing at the time, my dad already back then thought, what noise is this? It's way too heavy and So, and since I played like in my room, which I've always done until like 2 years ago when I actually was in a band and actually recorded stuff, I had no opportunity to show anything because I always replicated stuff. And but actually, I don't recall that I had a struggle, like at least keeping the rhythm. Obviously, listening to like very complicated parts, it's quite difficult to hear. Okay, if there's 1 or 2 guitars in the song, okay, what is rhythm, what is lead, and
of course,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And in that sense, also I remember like recently I went to a concert and I met a friend that I haven't seen like in ages, and very funnily, we played together. I wouldn't say in a band, but we had like this thing going on because there were a few musicians in our village back there. And he always came over to his cousin or friend or whatever. And I was there as well. And he started playing guitar back then when at that point I was already, I wouldn't say a fully fledged guitar player, but I was I was in it and I was committed.
Yeah. Okay.
Committed enough to like, okay, I want to know how this song works, and I'm gonna try to deconstruct it and put it back together in my way. And during that conversation we had a while ago, he was like, "Yeah, you were the best guitar player in Limpa." I said, "Well, there weren't that many to begin with, right?
There were the two of us.
Yeah, there were only the two of us. So what do you expect?" So that was quite funny.
Yeah.
And I, for a fact now, I know I checked out what he's doing now, and he's like beyond what I can do. He's really he went fully into this, and he recorded several songs, and he's like really a fluent and very good guitar player. So it's like a small aspect of a different story, but I mean it shows like how, as you say, as many people struggle with it, and many just are very committed and they go all the way, and I wouldn't say make it to the top, but they get to a position where it's comfortable for them to play. I never played in front of a crowd compared to you.
Of your instrument.
Yeah, mastering the instrument. Yeah. And again, as I said, like I've never played in front of a crowd, so for me that would be, I think, especially now, would be quite a challenge, because I'm comfortable in my zone, and going out there and showing stuff is always a different thing. I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: it's something that you practice as well. How you practice the notes, you practice, you practice the rhythm, you practice like playing in tempo, you practice. Well, I guess for a guitar, you practice like. Playing the right notes at the right time, and you experiment with with effects and pedals and things like that. In the same way, like playing in front of an audience, and that audience can be, it can be 2 people, and it can be 5 people, it can be 10 people. It's always nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
It always takes something out of you, but it also gives you adrenaline, and that is, I mean, it's a really interesting experience. But it's something that you can practice. The more you do it, the more used to the more you get used to that feeling of playing in front of people, and the more you learn how to manage your adrenaline.
Yeah, I think that's the most difficult part for me.
Yeah.
Because I remember back then when I met your sister, and while she was there, and not really, I don't remember how, but I was actually playing, and she just came into the room. I started shivering.
Yeah.
So that was like, okay, I know how this song works, but I don't know how the song works now. So that was quite funny.
It's I used to perform much more as a teenager, and later on when I went on to music studies, I used to perform much more. If I had to perform today, I know that it would take a lot of preparation, just getting used to performing to people again. So things that you can do to practice that is recording yourself, listening back to yourself. There are many people who use digital platforms, stream their music, things like that, and that already gives you the pressure. The pressure of, you're not necessarily playing in front of people, but you know that this is something that is being kept. It can be judged. It does give you that pressure, and like if I were to want to perform again, I would definitely be recording myself a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had this way of thinking a while back when I actually recorded my own thing, and I released it, and I was quite happy when I released it. But then the judgmental part kicked in, and I was like, oh wait, people can comment on this. So what I did basically, I followed a simple trick that many musicians do. When they put it out, they don't listen to it straight away. You need some time to digest the whole thing, and I think that was the most difficult time I had, as not only as a musician but also as a human being. Like, okay, I want to listen to it, but I know it's not good, even though I released it while it was good, at least to my ear. So that really kept me in a bit of a hassle. I didn't know what to do, and I tried to immediately after that, because I listened to it like maybe a few weeks after that, and that was way too early. And I immediately grabbed the guitar and I was like, no, this is not good. I need to do it either better or come up with something new straight away, because I don't feel comfortable. And I tried, and nothing came out. Like really, that was like this bleh, nothing. So,
and I guess that's the difference between a lot of the music that you do now is a lot improvised, and it is very reactionary.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Whereas the big difference between that and classical music, of course, and well, classical music in the sense that we know it nowadays, is that classical music nowadays is reproducing music that has been written, down, that exists in written form, and so, I mean, there's a huge difference there in terms of like preparation.
Yeah. You have something on the paper, like you can go on the internet or wherever, and you find stuff that is, as you said, written down.
Yeah.
On the other hand, for my things, I can't even practice my own pieces nowadays.
Yeah,
because
but that's the thing.
I'm super confused on what did I do back then.
Yeah, and that's the thing actually. For more improvisation kind of music, on one hand you have the disadvantage that you have to. I mean, it's improvisation, so you're basically almost coming up with it on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So your mastery of your instrument has got to be so much better.
Yeah.
But it's not about the small details anymore. I mean, yes, to an extent it is, but nobody's going to start judging you the way that, if you perform, I don't know, a Chopin concerto.
Because people, first of all, they know the piece.
They know the piece, and nowadays in the classical music world, actually, you have this this movement, this trend towards reproducing a piece flawlessly.
Yeah.
And in a way, like our current music industry and the way that we record things have contributed to that, because you can go back and edit things. You can do several takes. And most of the performances that we hear through digital recording are not live.
Yeah.
So that kind of pushes this idea that any wrong note, for example, is the end of the world.
Not in jazz, though.
No, absolutely not. No, and that's where it comes in. Like, okay, well, because classical music has been written down and people study pieces, people study these songs and pieces for years and years and years. I know, like, I played the Rachmaninoff concerto that I was learning that piece for 3 years.
Yeah, it really is a long time
to spend with one piece,
Yeah.
And still, I don't feel comfortable playing it because it's just such a difficult piece. So, and then you've got people who have been learning that same piece all their life, or who are so much better than I am, and they can come in and comment like, yeah, okay, I would not have played it like that. Oh yeah, okay, and that feeling of being judged by people who absolutely know what you are doing wrong, that is crazy.
Yeah, and I think this particular sentence brings us back also to our main theme that we were going through here, because we
have deviated a little bit.
Deviated definitely, but it's still connected. So in that sense, you think like a metalhead like me or somebody else out there is able to listen to classical music and say, I know how this works. I know how this it does make sense to my ears, because as you know, like many people compare metal music to noise. On the other hand, many metal listeners also comment that classical music is not their thing, and they tend to go to jazz because
the word I've heard very often is boring.
What is boring?
No, classical music is boring. Yeah. Usually when people say it's not my thing, it's because they think that classical music is boring, and it really depends, because there's such a huge variety of classical music. And I mean, okay, if all you have heard is like, I don't know, Mozart, eine kleine Nachtmusik, which is a great piece, it's really nice, but it's also very cute, and la la la, rainbows and everything.
Okay, that does definitely make sense in that sense.
Whereas to someone who listens to metal, I would absolutely tell them, like, don't listen to Mozart. You're not going to like it. But maybe something more dramatic, like, I don't know, some Beethoven, some Brahms, or
Rachmaninoff in that case.
Rachmaninoff tends to be more
complex.
Romantic in that sense. Romantic in the sense of like beautiful harmonies, beautiful textures,
melody-wise.
Whereas some Beethoven pieces are like just brutal.
Yeah, the hammering also.
For example,
like, I get what you mean. Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, for me personally, since I'm not never really listened to classical music until I met you.
Uh-huh.
So, and I remember this particular piece, and you know which one it is. Is my favorite piece, or my favorite set of pieces is from a French composer called Debussy, or Debussy.
Yeah.
And that's really like this romantical yet, expressionism like stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I can't really tell you why I like it though.
Uh-huh.
It just reminds me of several things that I would like to play, for example, on the guitar,
Okay.
or recreate certain parts of these melodies with the guitar. Basically thinking, this would make a good backing track so I can play some decent guitar. And I'm sure people have thought of, many guitarists especially have thought of classical pieces in that particular way. Like, can I deconstruct it in a way that I can use it?
Absolutely. I mean, okay, many people don't consider it metal, and I agree with it. Evanescence used Mozart's Requiem.
Did they?
Yeah.
Seriously, I didn't know that.
In
Okay.
Lacrimosa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
For example.
I'm learning today.
Yeah, no, it gets done quite often. One of the weirdest crossovers, let's say, between genres that I'd ever heard was a Taiwanese song that was sung upon the melody of Rachmaninoff concerto.
Okay.
It was really weird.
That sounds intriguing and yet weird.
I've got no idea how I would find it again, because we heard it in, like, when I was in Taiwan in a cafe.
Okay.
I was like, what is this?
You'll probably never find it again.
No.
And it won't make a difference also, probably.
No, I don't think so.
I
But
mean,
yeah, it gets used quite. I mean, themes from classical music get used. I wouldn't say fairly often, but it does get used. Yeah.
But in that case, I mean, what is your view on? I'm not sure if you listen to many of these bands, but as you know, there's this genre development that has been going on for several years now, like where they try to mix orchestral metal or symphonic metal. I wouldn't say they're all good, but at least they're trying to do something and not necessarily recreate stuff, but stay true to the classical aspect of an orchestra or a piano in that case. Like I would say, I don't know, you said it, Evanescence is a beautiful mixture of, even though, yes, it is new metal, sorry guys, piano and heavy music, and it works.
I find it works really well. I find having, like, I was discussing this with my wife just the other day. I find that having a piano with the backing of the usual, metal guitars and drums and even the vocals from metal music, I find that it. So my preference, just so that a little tangent, a little.
Go ahead, feel free.
Yeah, my tastes in metal music is usually more melodic, which can be expected from a classical musician.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
That being said, in classical music, my tastes are usually fairly percussive. Okay. So on one hand, okay, I really like the romantic, like, lying down and listening to, I don't know, some Rachmaninoff and some, like the heavy romantic stuff.
Joe Hisaishi, even that's nothing to do with pure classical, but it is.
But very romantic,
inspired. Yeah,
very romantic, neo-romanticism and all that stuff. That being said, I really, really like also like the more percussive sides of classical music, like Bartok, Prokofiev, and even like more modern kind of classical music, where they try to use more of the. Let's talk about piano. The more of the piano's percussive side.
Okay.
So, and playing with time, playing with rhythm, time signatures is something that I really, 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 really like. I find that gives music so much complexity, and that is one of the aspects that I really enjoy in metal music. Is that most or many metal bands try to play around with the time signature. One of the reasons why I really like Dream Theater. Yeah. You are never in a 4/4 time signature.
No. I think they have no clue how to write a song in the 4/4. Basically,
they probably know, but it's not interesting to them.
Yeah, it's not interesting. Yeah. I'm not the biggest Dream Theater fan, but I get why you like it, and I get also why you look for these particular time signatures. And I mean, there are other bands, obviously. I mean, I know you're a big fan of Gojira, which is
Oh yes.
Nothing to do with progressive music yet. Yet there is this weird sound signature, especially in the drumming, that is really set in front of their music, I think.
Yeah.
And that gives the music its soul,
Yeah.
so to say.
Yeah.
So, and I get why you like it, and you said it before, like you like the percussive side of certain pieces, and that makes absolutely sense now.
Yeah.
So,
But what I was trying to get at, actually, now that I go back to before my parentheses, is that in metal, or it's almost too percussive for me. It's almost too harsh of a sound for me, and so that's why I really adore having a piano in there, because it gives it a very melodic side. And melodic metal is, or kind of symphonic metal are things that I really adore. Yeah.
Not necessarily personally, I'm not a big fan anymore. I was before, yes, definitely. You have the symphonic metal wave, then you have the orchestral metal wave, you have those neoclassical movement also in metal, where they just try to play a violin part on the guitar, which is nuts in my opinion. Trying to do it, I mean, I can't do it. Just saying.
Oh wow! Okay.
I'm not sure if you know anything about this.
I don't.
And,
You'll have to let me listen to some.
There are several bands. Also, they are in the symphonic metal area, like Rhapsody of Fire, which is well known for their guitar playing, which is really definitely Paganini inspired.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have like enormous bands like Nightwish that put their whole wall of sound on the orchestral level. And in my view, I think the instruments itself, like the drums and the guitar, they are put in the background, and they mainly focus on the orchestrations and the vocals. Which, I mean, if you're into that, and Nightwish is a good band, don't get me wrong, but I think that the balance is a bit off. In my opinion.
I agree. I'm not a big fan of Nightwish, to be honest.
I get it.
To me, it's almost too big.
Yeah, it's like a big band.
Yeah, it's the same problem that I have with Tyrion. I find, I find it's almost too commercial.
Yeah. Therion is also again a typical symphonic metal band that tries to put way too much. I mean, my opinion, or our opinion in that case. They focus way too much on a particular thing, and I think a lot of it gets lost if you hear the whole song.
Yeah, also not a fan of that kind of operatic vocals. In metal, I don't know why. I find that it doesn't really work.
Again, that's why I agree with you that you don't like Nightwish. Personally, I was a big Nightwish listener back then when I started like going into these particular genres, and I discovered Nightwish, and I was like, wow. But then again, I mean, as you can listen to a song and in your ear, you turn off several switches and say, I listen to the music. I don't care about the vocals. I can do that. And I'm very happy that I can do it, because nowadays I prefer the newer Nightwish, because I think that her voice is less operatic than the one that was before. That's just
when you say newer, when was that?
Like the recent, like the last singer they have is Floor Jansen, and the one I really don't like is the original singer Tarja Turunen, which is, in my opinion, way too focused on operatic style.
Okay.
And some songs work well together because there's no other instrument except hers, and maybe an orchestra or a synthesizer in that case doing orchestral stuff with some piano notes. That's it. That works. But like on a big scale, I don't know. It sounds wrong in my opinion.
Okay. So yeah, I would have to listen to it again. I don't know what the new Nightwish
Let's just
style
say,
is, but
Floor Jansen is also a really good singer. She can do operatic, but she has a bit more of a roughness to her voice, and also like a bit more. She can play better with her voice and can adapt to certain songs, like dark or lighter or innocent, and that's something I really appreciate. And I started listening to Nightwish again due to her. She played in another band before, I forgot the name, never mind. And like for example Epica, which is like purely operatic, I can't listen to it. I really can't. And if I do, I really have to like ignore her voice, even though she has a beautiful voice. But again,
style mismatch.
Yeah, exactly.
would like to I'd like to bounce off something that you mentioned, like just in passing. You said instruments or synthesizer replicating an opera, not an opera, an orchestra.
Yeah.
As someone who has been listening to orchestral music for quite a while now, I can't stand synthesizers replicating an orchestra. You hear the difference. There's such a big difference. Yeah. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's probably also a big thing. Like why, for example, I don't know. Like, yeah, it's just that for me, hearing the flaws in someone's playing is part of the experience. Yeah. If you give me a violin that is playing perfectly on pitch, for me it's very clear, first of all, that this is not a real violinist playing. Yeah. And sometimes it's so nice to have that like little human touch inside of the playing. Yeah. And
let's say just a vibrato sounds better a bit too or less well played than a perfectly sounding vibrato on a violin or even a guitar in that case.
Yeah, and not only that, but like the little mistakes that happen that are inevitable when you've got a human playing an instrument. To me, that is what makes the music.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's kind of also what I mean when I say things sound a bit too commercial. Is that they sound too static. They sound too
well done.
Yeah, I feel like the soul is missing from that music. Yeah.
Yeah, I discovered that while recording my own things, because I wanted to add some layers and some wall of sound in a miniature scale, basically. So I tried playing around with some of those plugins I have, and I tried out cellos and violins, and I mean nothing is good enough. I'm sure there are several softwares and stuff where you get close enough to a real person, but obviously most of the stuff that I write and also then in that case listen to later on, like if I go to other metal bands that are in this particular field, you can definitely hear that, okay, this is a plastic kind of orchestration, and it sounds hollow, as you said. There's something missing, like the you know what I mean.
yeah, and it's difficult for me to explain because I hear it, but I'd never learned the terms to express that, and I don't know if those terms actually exist.
Must be, but I don't know them. So.
It's a very interesting thing, and I've noticed that a lot of people who, let's say, don't have a trained ear, and by trained ear I don't mean like classically trained or anything like that. I mean people who actively pay attention to the music, which you do. For example,
anyone can do it if you just. I mean, at least anyone can put some effort in it and get better, I would say.
Yes, it takes practice. It takes practice. It's a sense that you develop. But like, for example, you do it because first of all, you learned music by ear. Secondly, you've been trying to replicate things for a long time now. Yeah. And in order to replicate things, you have to start, picking out the different sound layers and start listening to the instrument, the different instruments very, very closely. So you have been training your ear for many years now. Yeah. I've noticed that people who haven't done that or who haven't had the chance to do that, they don't hear the difference.
It's difficult for me to understand it because I started maybe a bit late, but still early enough to and now I'm in a position where I say, I don't get it, how you can't hear it. The thing. Yeah. So it's really a bit annoying sometimes when I have discussions with friends or whatever, and many of them, I mean, I just mentioned a concert, for example. I hate it when people shake their head to the wrong beat. I can't stand it. I'm sorry, but it ticks me off. Like this, how? I mean, there's nothing there. Why would you? And then again. So
so you mentioned people at a concert shaking their head to the wrong beat. I've heard drummers who don't feel their own beat, and for me that's a problem.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, I know who you mean.
Well, no, it's not even just one specific person. I mean, like I've heard actually a few drummers who don't feel the beat, and that's a problem because the drummer is there to give the beat to the whole band.
Yeah. Yeah, if you lose the drummer mid-concert, I mean, I wouldn't say you're screwed, but there's definitely a problem there.
Yeah, and it's like in a lot of music, the drums are just always there.
Yeah.
And you hear them all the time. So yeah, I mean, there's that, and then but also in terms of just like the sound layers, like not being able to pick out the different layers, and then also talking about you know the sound world in classical music. You talk a lot about sound world and timbre and temperament of the music. You know, picking out the different layers, but then still being able to regard the music as a whole.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all the different skills that you learn when training your ear.
Yeah, true.
And in fact, what I can tell you is that up to a certain extent, classical training will be about learning the instrument, so learning the technical aspects of the instrument. But after you have gotten used to the technical aspects, you're no longer on the piano, for example. You're no longer going to learn how do you move your hand, how do you move your fingers. But it's a lot of training your ear to hear the differences, like the minute, detailed differences between, okay, if I move my finger like this, is it going to sound any different to moving my finger like that? So
it's also like a comfortable aspect. Can I do it like not only easier for me, but also that the sound itself sounds maybe nicer? Or
so also learning what sounds nicer to the audience, but also learning how to make it sound not nice in case that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I get it. Like really, like going for it, and okay.
Yeah,
I think there's something similar in the metal kind of world, I would say. Obviously less expressive, I would say, on a particular instrument maybe, but certain parts, obviously, in certain songs that are, first of all, me personally, I think you're agree with me. I prefer those pieces that are like 15-20 minutes long.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So there's like a whole story to tell, and there's a beginning, there's an intro, there's a bridge, maybe there's a chorus, maybe there's a second bridge, there's a second chorus, and then there's this immense ending, and the song is basically fading out. I mean, that's the whole reason why I liked metal back in the days, because there were these kind of songs. Yeah. And in these particular songs, very often you are exposed to this like whole. I want to make it feel more aggressive, and I really let loose on all fronts. Yeah. And on the other hand, I can be romantic as well and beautiful, and just continue playing the guitar, even continue playing the drums, but I slightly change my style of playing. Yeah. So.
Or sometimes, the absence of one of the instruments that makes a huge difference to the overall sound.
Yeah. Less is more, I would say. Very often.
Yeah. I mean, it can be, and I think there's this tendency, like for people who are just starting out, to always want more and more and more. Yeah. But the more you learn about the music, the more you listen to your own music, the more you actually understand that, okay, having less is a different effect. Yeah, it's not better or worse, but it's a different effect. And the more of these kind of effects that you can create, the better a musician and the better a band you will be. Yeah. Because you will be able to create more contrasts. You'll be able to create different flows, dynamic flows. So like, you've probably heard me like muttering to myself while we are listening to music together, muttering to myself like, you should do more, or you should do less. Less over there, because, and that's one of the things that I find I get a lot actually when I listen to, well, not all metal bands, some maybe slightly more amateurish or slightly more self-trained metal bands, is that I wish I could spend like 2 hours with them. Okay. I wish I could spend 2 hours with them and show them how they can create more or bigger effects with contrast. Yeah. because there are often
like a color palette, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
More like a painting. Yeah, okay, I get it.
Absolutely, yes. So because one thing that I've noticed actually is that very often, in order to play loud, people just play loud. What they don't realize is that music sounds loud in contrast to soft music, or in contrast to silence. And so in order to make something sound louder, first of all, you have to preface it. I mean, especially if you're writing the song, you have this opportunity to preface it with something that is much softer, much more melodic, and then to create that effect of something being much more aggressive or much louder, it will sound so much more impressive after that.
Yeah.
And the other aspect of it is that very often we think of loud music as being fast.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But you know what's interesting?
Yeah.
One of the main lessons that my piano teacher taught me when I was a teenager is that in order to create a louder music or a louder effect, especially on the piano at least, you play slower. You slow down, because that gives it more weight to each and every note that you're playing.
Yeah. I was exposed to this again due to my recent or last year's experimenting with other musical genres, and I think finding my style of playing after all these years. Because yes, I always wished to play in a metal band, and I remember that I had those small, very small bands, let's call it bands, because it was basically like a 2 weeks project, and then it went all wrong and we started drinking beer after that. So
okay.
You know the drill.
Yeah.
So last year really showed me that, as you say, and I was exposed to all the things you said now, I was exposed to it in real life and on my own. So I had a lot of time also, like, how can I reproduce this? But it doesn't sound right. It sounds loud, as you said, but it sounds less attractive also, and less expressive, even though it's very loud.
Yeah.
So what happened with me is basically on an amp, the gain button was always all the way up. So I think the gain level was never as low as it is nowadays on the things I play and I record.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's important that you don't go in the other trap, which is like, okay, I've now realized this, now I'll go all the way to the other extreme.
No, I think for me personally, it went like, let me reduce this.
Yeah.
Let me reduce this, and let me try to appreciate like empty space. And even though those empty spaces are not necessarily empty or filled with silence whatsoever, but there the beauty of reverb and delay comes in, and that's something I fell into this rabbit hole let's say 2 years back. I discovered this amazing, nothing to do with metal even, the shoegaze and post-rock genre. And I got lost in it, and I think it really changed my way of first of all listening to music, and secondly appreciating less, even though there's nothing less in it. I'm not sure if it makes sense what I just said, but that's basically how I felt, and I'm pretty convinced of what I'm doing now. And due to the band I had with a friend of ours, it really helped me like shaping the way I want to make music. Not only reproduce stuff that I still love to listen to, if it's metal or whatever, but like really put the final touch on, okay, this is me. This is totally me, and I get it, and I can play it, and I can write songs about it. I've never written a song before, so
guess what? Neither have I.
So that was like a revelation to me, like being able to do this. And I think the way of, because I watched a lot of YouTube videos back then to like get in the way of how do you write a song or how do you do this, and many of these guys who taught the lessons were classical, either pianists or violinists. It has nothing to do with the genres. It's basically all genres work, or all music works in a similar pattern, and it's just up to you to know, first of all, where to start and where you want to go to.
Yeah, I think what's important is to know what the similarities, but also know the differences. I mean, obviously you're not composing classical music.
Definitely not.
No, but it's still, I mean, the principles of music are present in both.
Yeah.
Are present in most genres of music.
Let's say there's certain rules, even though you would like to break it, but they're not meant to be broken, for example.
You can break them, but only once you have understood why they're there. Because if you have not understood why they're there and you just start randomly breaking rules, chances, well, maybe you'll come up with something good, but chances are you'll come up with something that doesn't sound great.
Yeah, and it puts you back at the beginning.
Yeah. So, and I think the main thing is that, like, okay, when you're breaking a rule, it's because either you've understood or because you're experimenting. And when you're experimenting, you should be trying to learn something from it.
Yeah, agreed. We went off track. Basically, that's what we do here. But it's fine. Never mind. My thing is, and I think we'll keep it at that, and maybe we'll do a second.
Sure.
Take.
I mean, this is something that we are both passionate about this.
Definitely,
so,
definitely.
Yeah.
I remember back in the days, the first, let's say, real metal band I showed you. And I really appreciated the reaction. I know I talked about them a lot on the channel here, and there's certain lesser good things about them, but still, that was actually the first time I saw in real life also that you were actively listening to stuff I showed you, because before you never did, because it was so out of your comfort zone, and maybe also out of your way of liking the music and listening to the music. Yeah. And
I have to say that you had a different taste back then as well.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I listened to many as harsh and as dark, and as you said, it has to be fast and it has to be loud. That was basically my go-to.
And the thing about classical music is that you spend so much time, especially as a musician yourself, you spend so much time trying to perfect a nice sound. You know, what like getting a nice and not harsh sound out of your instrument.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, like, you're confronted with like all these really, really harsh sounds from metal music, some of which are really interesting. Yeah. But it's just, sometimes it's just too much. And even now, sometimes you show me something and I tell you, like, it happened just the other day. I mean, like 2 weeks ago. You showed me something and I had to tell you, like, okay, so like, in terms of complexity, in terms of songwriting, it sounds really cool. I can't listen to this.
Yeah, but I think I know now. I understand why you, even though you like the structure and you maybe like the drums, because recently our dear friend here started playing drums, so he pays way more attention to drums nowadays than to anything else.
That is true,
especially in metal or in rock music.
Give me a nice floor tom sound. It's so good.
Yes, underrated, I would say.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I really like Gojira.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he there's a reason why he has been elected like best drummer in the world for several years.
Yeah.
He's a beast. And but to come back to my initial question, I remember that particular album was Time 1.
Yes.
The famous, if infamous, record from Wintersun. And I remember you saying, you went like, and I even remember the way you were like going with the music and really like going into that. And this particular, I think it was Sons of Winter and Stars, the opening and the orchestral structure.
Yeah.
What I never got, that was the fact that, and you said it before, like, I don't like synthesizers and stuff that is too well produced. And this particular record is sooner, I think it is already 10 years old. So, yes, time flies, as you can tell.
Way to make me feel old.
Yes, same for me. So I never really got it how back then. Now I understand, obviously, but how a pianist like you and somebody who likes to listen to and actively listens to like orchestrations and stuff like that, I was like, why does he like it that much? I never understood why, because it can't be because of the harshness, because there was a certain harshness in these songs that probably put you off on a certain level, and yet you appreciate it.
Well, so yes and no, because I mean, as a teenager, I was still listening to Linkin Park and Evanescence, and I went into
let's say the mainstream stuff.
Mainstream stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Some Spanish metal for some reason.
Avalanche.
Avalanche, yeah.
Oh, Avalanche.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it. Or like
Black Mages.
Black Mages, yeah, for
That would
example.
be a good example as well.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't mind like a more harsh sound as long as there's a melody in there.
Mm-hmm.
As long as there's something I can latch onto, and Time One absolutely had that at all parts throughout the album.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, I guess you do understand why I like it now, but maybe I can explain it for our listeners. I find that there are so many different layers, and the music is so complex. Mm-hmm. I find there's a very nice use of different instrumentations.
Yeah.
And the other thing that, and I mean, you mentioned it before, but long songs and long musical ideas are amazing. I really, really like those. Like for me, the best albums are albums that are coherent throughout.
Yeah, that you have to basically listen from beginning to end.
Yeah, which is a bit unfortunate because you end up not listening to very much music then. You actually have to sit down and actively listen to.
Yeah, it's nothing you listen to in the car.
Yeah,
like,
no, you can't. You can't.
Yeah.
Which is why, for example, in my car playlist, Time One never comes up. But but something that you can just sit down, listen to for an hour, and like you come out of there and you go like, okay, well, that was a nice journey.
Yeah.
And I find that
like a certain exhausted. You feel like, wow, I'm tired of listening to this, and yet it was inspiring in a way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that experience is something that is, I mean, talking about the title of this episode, similarities. That is something that you find both in classical music a lot.
Yeah.
And in metal.
It's a good name I chose, right? Admit it at least.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, think about it. Let's say you go to listen to a Brahms or a Mahler symphony.
Okay. I only know one, I think. And I don't ask me the name. I don't know it.
No worries.
Anyway.
No worries. Basically, a Mahler symphony, 4 movements usually, is a piece of music that goes over between 40 minutes and an hour.
I would have said 45, but okay.
Yeah, 45 minutes and an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It is coherent throughout. You go from first movement, second movement, third movement, fourth movement. What happens is that the theme of the first movement usually comes back in some form in the fourth movement, so it creates this kind of structure, and it's a musical journey, almost like listening to a metal album sometimes.
Yeah. Now that you explained it a bit in depth, I would say I know several records that work that way.
Yeah.
And where there's like this particular red string that goes through the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes it gets bigger and it amplifies, or it shows you a different side of it, and it still remains the same idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What you in music usually call a motif or a leitmotif is a word that gets used quite often, and I find that is a huge similarity between the two genres. I mean, I've been listening to more Dream Theater in this past year.
Yeah.
And okay, some of their albums, sure, okay, it's just individual songs.
Yeah.
But some of their albums are just a huge work that is maybe not always coherent throughout. But you always have like some motifs that come back in different pieces, in different songs, and for me that is really I just really like that.
I really get why you like Dream Theater that much, because there is this continuity, and they are super complex. I mean, I don't have to tell you guys out there that they are complex. They're well known for that. For me personally, it's just like, I can't stand the voice, but okay, that's personal.
I get it. I don't think that his voice fits to everything that they have done, and in fact, I tend to cherry pick the songs that I listen to from them.
But I find it a bit harsh in that sense, because yes, I like my Dream Theater songs. I can't listen to a whole album, not because of the music, but because of the voice.
Ah, really? Okay.
So Dream Theater, I think they were in Luxembourg like last year, was it? Or the year before? I don't remember actually.
I missed it.
Anyway, I was there.
Yeah.
So I had really trouble time like switching off his voice, listening to it live, because musicianship definitely top notch. I mean, they all know how to play their instruments.
Oh, yeah.
So that was really a pleasure to see. But yeah, again, James Labrie is okay, aside, but it's not my favorite voice in the metal world. Definitely,
I can understand. I can completely understand, and I think there are some songs where he tries to play around with it with different textures, different sound worlds, and even different techniques.
Yeah.
And I think those tend to be better.
Yes, I think I know which one you mean. I mean, it's on the... What's the name of the record again? With the face? I forgot it. Anyway.
The record with the face.
I
don't see the record
anyway,
pictures in front of me.
We'll see that later on.
Yeah.
we'll check that out later on. But Dream Theater is like this kind of band. I wouldn't say either you like it or you hate it, because most of the people seem to like it. But a particular thing I really enjoy, though, even though I don't like his voice, is the fact that I know other bands that do like those mix between harsh vocals and clean vocals, and he mostly sings clean. I mean, I've never seen or heard him like singing anything harsh, and I wish at least that they would like come up with like not necessarily a harsh song, but invite some, and they have a well-known status out there, so they should be able to do it, because James Labrie was featured on several other records, for example. But that would be my wish for in this particular case, Dream Theater, that they would get maybe another guy into, and maybe have like a challenging like vocal session or something like that.
I absolutely agree. I also think that the voice is the weakness of Dream Theater.
Yeah.
I listen to it despite the voice.
Yeah, I get it.
And yeah, I mean, really the songs that I appreciate the most from Dream Theater are either where that are maybe less harsh, and so the voice fits better.
Yeah.
Or where there's less voice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it, but I mean, it's true.
Yeah, but then I mean, again, it's not. It's a flaw, let's say. But in general, Dream Theater, they really know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, it's been his voice for so long now, they can't change it.
No.
They could add to it if they wanted to, but it's kind of their style.
Yeah, it's definitely their style. Yeah. But then again, as you said it before, I mean, they have this, they stay coherent, and if they do a record, they do it with those strings in it that go from beginning to end. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes, and I'm not sure why I do it, but I compare Dream Theater to Devin Townsend, who is also a mastermind, but his records don't make sense. It's basically a mashup of songs that he writes. The last one, I have to say, though, Light Work, that came out last year, is a bit different, but then again, it's Devin Townsend. He does whatever he wants to, and it's his own. He has his own genre, as you well know. So I would just say, I think you should listen to the last record of him, and I think you could see what Dream Theater could do, something similar like that, if it makes sense. But anyway, I think wow, we've been over an hour already. Not bad. Really? I am super tired. So are you. Me too. We are both hungry, and I mean, in that particular case, I would say thank you very much for joining me on this similarity trip.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk about these kind of things.
I know, music is music, and we both adore it. Well, in that case, I would say see you soon. Hopefully, we'll definitely do a second part, because classical and metal, definitely there's more to say than just an hour-long speech or monologue of us.
Definitely, yes.
In any case, thank you all for listening, and we hear you guys very soon. Cheers.
Bye.